Morning, everybody. December the 16th, 2024. It's Liberty County Commissioners Workshop this morning. And we have a couple of items we're going to be discussing. So Commissioner Arthur's here, Commissioner Karbowski's here. Commissioner Whitmire couldn't be with us. So we have three. It's a good start today. And two items we're going to be discussing. Number one, and we'll get this one done first, since I anticipate the item number two take a little bit longer. Over in Commissioner Arthur's neck of the woods in Precinct 2, discussed with LJA Engineering's recommendations for the subdivision and development regulations for drainage plan and Appendix J. That's flood damage prevention ordinance. So, fellas, y'all want to, first of all, if y'all have a microphone, do we have one? Yeah. Let me get you hooked up. And then
They have mine. I'll share yours.
it gives just a minute.
Oh, they want to pass mine?
This is what we have left. I can take it over there where he's at. Yeah. No, that's fine.
Okay, is that
You might lean over into it. If y'all would introduce yourselves, let everybody
Of course.
know who you are.
is this working?
Yeah.
You know, here. Okay. I am William Conlon with LJ Engineering. Also with me is Daniel Dotson with LJ. We are working on the countywide master drainage plan as part of the GLO grant funded study. One of the 5, 6, 7 items we are actively working on is a review of the criteria manual and an update there too. It was something we had envisioned kind of working on progressively throughout the life of the study. Our schedule is 3.5 years ish. Probably got 6 months down, so about 3 years to go. As we progressively work through the study, our intent was to review and through conversation with y'all as the client, and also another division within LJ that does a lot of the drainage reviews on y'all's behalf. See if there's nuances to the criteria that could be strengthened or changed or simplified or cleaned up. And it was meant to be a progressive effort to where at the very end we would have a relatively decent update to the criteria and some creation of new documents that would help manage the new models that we're going to be developing over the next couple of years. The impetus of this revision that was presented, I think, in the November meeting, Harris County Engineering had reached out and effectively played the card that they want to have kind of 5 minimum standards of drainage enforcement for the surrounding communities around Harris County to allow partnership projects to take place outside of county limits. There's a lot of work that's been done, I think, and I have some stuff in front of me. I don't know if it's worth trying to put up on the machine over there, but Fort Bend County, Waller County have formally adopted the 5 minimum standards. A lot of the cities within Harris County and some of the adjacent cities have adopted it, and they are still working with Brazoria County, Galveston County, Montgomery County, and y'all to kind of find a way to incorporate these 5 standards. And the 5 standards are incorporation of Atlas 14 rainfall rates, which was, I think, issued by NOAA maybe 2 or 3 years ago. And it kind of incorporates the change to the change to rainfall assumptions, a minimum detention factor of 0.55 acre feet per acre for residential development, 1 acre or larger, prohibit the use of hydrograph timing as a substitute for detention unless it outfalls directly into one of the major rivers or Galveston Bay. No net fill in the 500-year floodplain, and then a minimum finished floor elevation to the 500-year elevation. The use of the 500-year is kind of been accepted as an interim level of inundation for what the Atlas 14 rainfall probably will get to when the new maps and models are created. The current information that everybody has across the Gulf Coast is the pre-Atlas 14 rainfall amounts, which is around 12 inches in 24 hours, is a 100-year event. The current effective 500-year rain is about 16 inches of rain in 24 hours. The Atlas 14 rain, when it took into consideration Imelda, Harvey, Ike, Memorial Day, Tax Day, and everything from like 1970 till now, that amount of rain has shown that a 1% chance storm, a 1% in any given year, effectively a 100-year rainfall for our region is around 16 inches now instead of 12 inches. Well, 16 inches was the old 500. So that's the interim consideration that people are applying, and we've been using as an interim stopgap of the 500 elevation. So these are the 5 standards that Harris County has suggested or requested if you want to have partnership potential with the county on drainage projects.
Do you anticipate that number going up any in the next 2 or 3, 4 years?
In terms of rainfall amounts? No, sir. And actually, I've got some updates since we put this together a couple months ago till now. I've got a little bit of an update. MapNext, Harris County is just about done with their incorporation of the Atlas 14 rainfall into the models across the entire county, along with mapping that comes with it. The Atlas 14 100-year rainfall within the MapNext output is showing an elevation between the old 100 and the old 500. So it's not getting all the way up to the 500-year event. So there's some attenuation of the rainfall and absorption in the ground and other things that come to kind of temper that 16 inches of rain is not the actual output, as well as the overall width is the terrain has changed and the LIDAR has changed. So the 500-year, we don't anticipate the Atlas 14 100-year to be equal to the 500. We anticipate being a hair lower. So it's still a good threshold there. So we went through the criteria manual. I'm sorry, let me get the exact verbiage. Sorry. Well, the subdivision floodplain regulations, and it's a 243-page document. The design criteria for drainage starts at about 100, page 100. And we went through all of it and kind of incrementally made small changes to incorporate these criteria. The good news is your criteria already has Atlas 14 rainfall in it as a guiding principle for doing drainage calculations. Adopting a 0.55 acre feet per acre as a detention rate, as a minimum detention rate, is probably not going to be a problem for most design projects, because if you run Atlas 14 rain through the normal calculations that would dictate a detention rate, you're probably going to be higher than 0.55 anyway. That's with Atlas 14. The 0.55 was kind of the rate that was an average volume for pre-Atlas 14 rainfall. When you add more rain, you're probably gonna have more volume. Therefore, I don't think the 0.55 is going to hinder anybody. It's just a baseline, and it's a good number to have. I think it's a valid number. The use of hydrograph timing, I have no objection to. I think that's a very valid sentiment, and it was a very simple sentence that we could incorporate in. The last two are the ones that are a little bit conversational. The use of the 500-year floodplain for no net fill, as well as establishing finished floor elevations. I believe they're good criteria, but I believe they're what's the right word? They're going to be hard to implement, because not every floodplain that's in Liberty County is a documented modeled floodplain. Mm-hmm. The areas that have a developed map and a developed floodplain will have the 100 and the 500-year elevation on the flood insurance study and on the flood map. There is that zone, shaded zone X, which is the 500-year floodplain. Areas that are more the other side of the Trinity from Harris County side, They have more zone A, which is an unstudied mapped floodplain. And that's only for the 100-year extents. There is no zone A 500 year. Now, taking a zone A and establishing an elevation, there's some assumptions go into that. Engineers can do that all day long, and it's relatively straightforward to get something that meets the flood insurance regulations and the flood and FEMA guidelines that y'all have to abide to. Doing that to the 500 year becomes cumbersome because there is no zone A 500. And that's been a problem across a lot of the counties outside of Harris County. I had some conversation with Waller County. They're in the same boat trying to manage the 500 year systems.
Well, that's my reason for the question about you anticipate numbers changing. Was this really kind of started with a conversation with Commissioner Ramsey in Harris County when he said, if you would do this and match ours, I just want to make sure if we match that theirs is going to change again in the short term. And then we had to go back and recalculate. That was the caveat that we're kind of facing. So, what are your thoughts there?
The effort and time that they have now put into MapNext with the Atlas 14 rainfall, my understanding is when MapNext is adopted and we have the Atlas 14 100-year 1% annual chance of flood, they will come off of the 500-year regulations and go back to Atlas 14 100-year. The true BFE for the flood insurance study that is the 1% chance, which is FEMA standards, FEMA's minimum regulations. If they stay at 500 year, I'd be shocked tremendously, especially if they stay at Atlas 14 500 year. That would be an absolute, I don't know how to say this politely, but ridiculous assumption. So I would be pretty based out that they would adopt the Atlas 1400, and that would be go back to what it was, just replace Atlas 14 with, or replace effective with Atlas 14 100 year. So with the information that we provided as the kind of adjustments and criteria updates, there is a separate document that y'all have, which is a floodplain ordinance, and that one is more geared towards the FEMA standards, and that is where we've put in the 500-year floodplain fill and the 500-year finished floor elevation information. And I think if desired, there may be some ways to kind of temper some of that with keeping your current criteria, which states there is 2 feet above the effective 100-year. But maybe instead of taking it straight to the 500-year across the board, maybe make a comment or a revision that it's the higher of 2 feet above the effective BFE or above the 500-year, whichever is higher. Because if you go out to the east side of the county, there is no 500-year. And you would be easy to manage that 1 foot above the zone A 100-year or 2 feet above the zone A 100-year, which is your current criteria. And I think that would give y'all some flexibility and the development community a better understanding of how to manage that. Most of the area that drains into Harris County has detailed floodplain and mapping and 100-year and 500 years. So within the stuff that does drain to a Harris County facility, you would have the higher of the 500-year or 2 feet above the 100-year. And I think you would have a much easier time managing that going forward. And the same could be for the 500-year floodplain fill. That way you wouldn't have to create a 500-year floodplain on zone A areas on the east side.
You know, one of our current criteria is, zero impact. That's what you got starting the project is what you got when you finish the project. Does that play any part in here too?
Yeah.
Okay.
So a lot of the criteria, 90% of this information is unchanged, and we're still able to manage that. Now, over the next couple of years, I think working with y'all, working with the development community, we will get a sense of what needs to be massaged, corrected, updated, strengthened, clarified. But from this update, it was literally just how to incorporate these 5 things with the minimal amount of changes to the areas outside of outside of areas that drain to Harris County.
How will this affect somebody going to build a house in this area?
Say again?
How will these changes affect somebody, a resident wants to build a house on? They've got an acre of land they want to build a house on.
So The detention factor is for 1 acre or larger, or over an acre, and it exempts single building and accessory structure for a private residential development. The fill in the floodplain and the finished floor elevation are unchanged. Well, it applies the higher of the 500 year or 2 feet above the 100 year. And there's very few places where the 500 year is above 2 feet above the 100 year. It would be interesting to me to find an area where the 100 year is 2 feet under the 500. Most of the time they're less than a foot difference.
So, okay, I'm gonna build a house. What do I gotta do?
Effectively the same thing you've been doing before we had this conversation for 95% of the county.
For 95% of but
Every project is different. I mean, I could run scenarios on 10 places and
okay. With the changes that as far as the permit department and stuff we've got to do.
it actually makes it easier because the standards that are in here are still the standards that they've been applying for the past, I think, 4 years since this criteria was updated. It's added a little bit of clarity for the minimum detention factor to where it's either 0.55 or bigger. So if there's a small project that doesn't need much, it could be pretty cleanly just 0.55 is your detention rate. For the finished floor elevations, again, I'm gonna suggest an update to what was submitted in November to have that higher than 2 feet above the BFE or the 500 year. And that will simplify a lot of this conversation and not change the majority of it. Because again, 2 feet above the 100 year, I think, is a stricter than what Harris County is applying at 500 year minimum. But if you put that higher than, your 2 foot above the 100 year, which is already in your criteria, will be 98% the governing factor of setting the finished floor of the structure.
Yeah.
And that's already in the criteria.
So,
That's unchanged.
so on a residence that you're building in that zone, that would at this point in time would have to be raised 2 foot before you can put it on. Is that level going to rise? I believe was what Commissioner Arthur is.
So the only way that would rise is if the mapped and modeled 500 year elevation is higher than that. And I have 1%, 2% time I've seen the 500 year 2 feet higher than the 100 year on a studied, mapped, modeled riverine floodplain. It's very rare to see the 500 year that much higher than the 100. And only if it's 2 feet above would it be above the criteria that you already have set.
Here in Liberty County, we have a whole lot of commercial sand pits, gravel pits, stuff like that. Now, when you go in, you're most of the time in a floodway.
Mhm.
You're digging material out, but you're not replacing it with anything. How is that? Is that going to change anything?
That's unchanged. If it's excavation and cut, that's unchanged.
It's just building up. You cannot.
The
not
fill,
build up.
the fill in the floodplain is, and forgive me about this one. I don't know if y'all have a fill in the floodplain requirement currently to the 100 year floodway only.
In a floodway, no fill.
No fill, and 100 year just 8. You have 12 inches, 8 inches above for compensating cut. I mean, sorry, you have compensating cut for fill in the floodplain. 100 year.
They, anytime they have any recommendations where they want to put fill in the floodway, they have to go to FEMA and get a homework.
Okay.
And make sure it's all clarified. Then y'all check it for
Okay.
accuracy on my side, and then we take it to Commissioner's Court. Approval, I sign it, and then we can give them.
Come up here where we can leave there. Sorry.
I knew you were going to say that.
So based on what she just said, if somebody does want to do fill in the floodplain, they have to go through FEMA to get the loamer, and formally,
If they're filling.
if they're
Not
filling,
taking out.
yeah, cut has never been an issue. You can cut all you want, and we beg you to cut because cut helps everything.
Well,
What about digging the sand pits?
Yeah,
Because
that's
I was told they're not allowed to do that because that alters the flow of the water.
Well,
They're in the
there's
floodway.
no change from Harris County's minimum updates to that effort. So whatever's been
That's
done
the
before is
issue-
still
the
being
issue
done.
That we're trying to resolve
Yeah, this
now
is the
because
problem we're having.
I'm like you. I don't see any problem in digging out material because
We've got-
you're creating a pit.
Basically, you're creating, but the problem is not actually with the pit. It's for the fill or the gravel or the sand sitting on the sides of the pit and altering the natural flow of water.
But you're not bringing material in.
No, but you're taking it out of the hole and you're setting it aside. So in essence, the water can't flow over it. It has to go around it. You see what I'm
So
saying?
yeah, there's a difference between storage and conveyance, and you can provide all the storage you want and excavate out if it stays flat above there. If you do provide fill and you want to raise something up for like a slab of a commercial building or a stockpile of dirt and you have compensating cut nearby, that is managed through a loamer with compensating cut for the fill. But if that impedes flow, then that needs to be analyzed as part of the loamer as well. And that the amount of stockpile that some of these sand pits have is a different ballgame.
Time out just a minute. We have revenue driving by. Also known as the Doppler effect.
Yes.
Okay.
But we've got sand pits that can't get permits, and they're all they're doing is digging sand out. I mean, they store some on the side, but I mean, it only impedes the flow. When it be-
And again, these 5 minimums don't change any of that. Do you want us to look into changing that to make it cleaner, easier, faster, harder? I mean, this effort was meant to be the 5 minimums from Harris County. And with some of the secondary revisions that I've looked at over the past couple of weeks, I think it's going to make it 10 times easier than what I originally proposed and less impactful to, again, 90% of the county is not going to see any of these modifications.
But if you're going to build a home, you got to go in and get an engineer and come in and do all this study and stuff.
Which is exactly has to be done already.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
has to be done already. They have to get an elevation certificate. If they're in the floodway, they also have to have a no rise certificate.
I'm having a hard time seeing how these additional restrictions helps Liberty County.
Well, I'll tell you right now, I'm still in a CAV with FEMA that we've been working on since April for the FEMA regulations not being followed in Liberty County as in the floodway. Horseshoe Lake Estates, people are building on slab on grade. You can't do that. It has to be up above the ground so you don't impede the flow because, you know, am I supposed to build on stilts 16 feet off the ground and I build it on a slab on grade, then that water that would have gone under my home is now going to double flood neighbors on either side. That's what I'm trying to prevent. Because like I said, this is still a working CAV that I'm dealing with FEMA, and I don't see any end in sight to this point right now.
And none of the stuff she's working on is changed in here.
But that's in the floodplain down there. A lot of that.
Floodway. There's floodplain and floodway. Floodway is where we have to be extremely specific.
Mhm.
Floodplain, they do have an elevation certificate. Most of them do raise it 2 foot above the BFE, which is generally because they have the lowest elevation at grade and highest elevation, and they know it's got to be at that highest elevation at grade or 2 foot more. And they understand that. But when I get to the floodway portion, people are just kind of stumped as why do we have to do this? And a perfect example is at the preserves off of 105. They got their permits, they got permission from their HOA. But rather than build their homes 17 feet above ground, they brought 45 loads of dirt in, which is illegal in the floodway. And they flooded every one of their neighbors completely by having all that dirt brought in. This is what I'm trying to prevent
Okay.
anybody else getting.
So how did that happen?
They're
Huh?
behind locked gates. I'm not allowed to go in there without their permission to come in. So I can't just go and cruise it like I do the other.
So we're looking about increasing our stills and doing stuff that we can't enforce.
We can't but the HOA wasn't even aware of it, I'm assuming, because that's what she said. Well, I didn't know I was supposed to do this. Well, she obviously saw 45 trucks come in with dirt in it. But now they call me every time they've got a truckload of gravel, so I can say, yes, they have a permit. Yes, this is just for the driveway.
So our problem is awareness.
Yes, big, all the way around. Yes, it's a big issue.
And the preserve is a private subdivision.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, subdivisions are aware. They know because they go through the whole engineering process.
Mhm.
But the individuals just think I'm being nasty to them and them alone. And I tell you, I get some really interesting conversations on the phone with people screaming at me. So
Yeah, but you got a whole list of duties and responsibilities for the floodplain administrator here.
yes, sir.
And we're having a hard time keeping up with what we got right now.
Well, I have help now. My budget allowed me to hire 2 floodplain inspectors so they can be in the field all the time because I can't do it by myself. I have to be in the office filling out the paperwork, and God help us if we have another event. Now we'll have 4 people, boots on the ground in flood zones so we can help and get it all done. Because right now, some of the issues that we're taking care of are still back from Harvey, trying to get their homes taken care of. That has to do with some of the demolition that we're dealing with as well. So yes, awareness is the main thing that we need to get through.
What's the primary reason we're changing this?
It was a request by Harris County to adopt minimum standards that would allow them to do partnership projects outside of their county boundaries for drainage improvements. So it was Commissioner Ramsey, Precinct 3, and his liaison, Eric Heppen. And then Dr. Rahman had put this memo out that listed out the 5 criteria. And there's kind of 3 tiers of adjacent communities, ones that have formally adopted it and are available to have partnership projects, ones that have made the changes but are pending adoption, and then ones that have not made any formal changes to their criteria.
Yeah, well, you got a couple counties that did apparently. But
Yeah, Waller and Fort
majority of
Bend
the
have
counties
adopted.
haven't.
Yeah.
And I just
So there is,
there's so many loose ends of this thing right now. I'm just would like to get some of this stuff cleared up before we start.
A big part of the portion of the problem we're having is all of the property in Liberty County that's not in the floodplain is already sold. So all that we have left is floodplain and flood zone, floodways. So that's why it's hitting us more and more. I'm anxious for LJA's study to be finished because we have so many areas in Liberty County that aren't mapped. We have no idea what the BFE. We can't even get it from FEMA because they don't know. The most current flood maps we have for Liberty County right now are 2018.
But we are not in compliance now with FEMA,
Correct.
nor is our insurance for our citizens available because we're not in compliance.
Correct.
Does this go in to help us get in compliance?
It's helping. Yes. And that's what I've been working on since April. We've managed to get almost all of the homes inspected, documented, letters sent. Of course, the letters 9 times out of 10 come back to me because people don't live in these homes anymore and we don't know how to get a hold of them. But it is helping. I just had a meeting with, 2 different meetings last week with FEMA. One was on the CAB, which is the community action visit. And then the other one was on the flooding event that we had in April. The flooding event we had in April, I've got completed.
Yeah.
All I have to do is send them some letters and stuff, and that one will be finished. But for the compliance issue, it's taking time. We're getting it, but it's taking time.
Do we have anything in place that in areas that we're buying out
Mm-hmm.
homes because to keep someone from coming in and buying this land around people that didn't
Yeah.
sell out?
All
keep
we
them
all
from
we have
building?
right now is when Liberty County buys these folks out, that property is to remain green space. But as for the neighboring properties, no, because I see signs out there all over the place, people selling the property. County Road 2166 is a perfect example. We've had 6 houses over there that were done on the demo list. And I mean, it's, they have the river, but they've also got lakes and stuff like that out there. And those people were inundated for 30 days. Their road washed out.
Yeah.
So we couldn't even get in to help them if we wanted to.
And they're gonna sell out potential. They're gonna be inundated completely. at
Exactly.
one point.
Because the side of the river now, it used to be a nice road where you can get in and out. The river has come in now where it's almost to the road to 2166.
No, it is. The road has been gone.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
Commissioner
road
Arthur
is
had
gone.
to do a lot
We
of fill
built
and
it.
stuff there to get us in and out.
We've rebuilt it across Timberland property.
Right. You came back on the other side. Yeah.
William, if you would, just a quick update on where we are in our study and plan. I know you've set benchmarks, or you're setting benchmarks throughout the county. You've done a lot of work. Just kind of give us an oversight of that real quick, and where this leads to and what we're doing now.
Okay. So the master drainage plan is 5 main phases. Those are, again, project management, which is kind of the complete project cycle, surveying effort, the H&H engineering, our communication effort, and then the reporting. Within the survey effort, we've established about 250 benchmarks, and these are 20, 30-foot rods hammered into the ground, capped with concrete for surveying use to reestablish a consistent level across the county that any surveyor, any engineer, any developer can tie into and be consistent against what will be the floodplain elevations that we establish in our models. So setting the benchmarks was a huge effort, and they have completed the field work, and they are almost done with the actual pages per monument. The LIDAR topography, the aerial topography that LIDAR's flying, HGAC flew it February of 24. We anticipate getting that preliminary data literally any day now. They said last week would have been last week. It is the unvetted, unQC'd version, but it is available to the stakeholders and the shareholders, which y'all are one of. And so we will be able to get it, review it, make sure it's in line, start to use it a little bit, kind of at our own risk. But the fully vetted QC version is anticipated to be available to the public sometime in April of 25.
Would other entities or stakeholders such as builders, developers, be privy to this as well? And the reason I'm asking, can it be shared now? So in anticipation of changes that we're proposing.
That will be my first question to HGAC once I get the data, because I am curious as well if developers can have access to it, because my understanding is it is not the public consumption version of the data.
Mhm.
It is a draft internal review, kind of peer review level data that's being given to the people that have paid to help acquire it. And y'all participated several $100,000 out of the grant to buy in your share. So we'll be getting it to review it on y'all's behalf because of the GLO study and whatnot. But my gut feel is I don't believe it's something that is public consumption yet.
Okay.
I've had that question even internally asked of us, and I don't think I can share it to internal departments,
I think
but I will ask.
the general question is, what in the form of the tapping of the brakes on developers does this do, with the LIDAR information and then the setting of the benchmarks, and then of course you'll be mapping the benchmarks after that
Yes.
for the overall study. But would it have a tap and brake effect on developers until you get all the information down to where they can follow the rules that we're proposing?
I don't believe so. Again, the adjustments to the rules based on what I've seen and reviewed, I don't think there's any modifications to the criteria that we're proposing
Mhm.
with the more recent updates of higher than the 500 year and your current 2 feet above the 100 year. I don't think this is going to change a lot other than make it easier for some projects because that minimum detention rate is going to be a baseline, and areas that have studied floodplains can use the 500 year or the 2 feet above the 100, which is current.
Okay.
And the areas out there aren't. So I don't think there'll be a huge hurdle. And the 3 or 4 months from now until April is not going to be a huge dramatic benefit or impact. Our modeling effort. So to continue on the conversation, as part of surveying, we're also doing bathymetric survey where we're taking drones and boats and sensors and going below water surface and measuring channels and creeks and lakes and everything else below
Yep.
water surface elevation. That the survey work is, and then physical topo of structures and bridges and crossings. We've completed that. We've got almost 1,000 structures that we've identified, and 600, 500 that we put boots on the ground and taken shots on. So all of that is waiting for the LiDAR so we can start doing the model work. Once we get the bathymetry done, we've got the channel or the crossings done. We'll do channel geometry to kind of confirm the LiDAR, and then we'll start doing the modeling and our existing condition modeling. Within Liberty County, there's about 10 drainage areas, 10 watersheds.
Yep.
Some that go to Harris, some that go to Jefferson, some that come south into Chambers. And so we'll set up a model for each one that helps us do parallel work, so we don't have one person waiting to do the next one. But we anticipate the existing condition modeling sometime September of 25. From there, we will investigate or have a stakeholder meeting, have conversations with the public, confirm what we're seeing is what they're seeing and what y'all are seeing, and then go into alternative analysis and improvements and even future land use, like take the base model and develop the rest of the county and see what it does to the flows. And then what do we need to do to mitigate that? And what can we do to mitigate problem areas? So I have multiple layers of mitigation analysis. That is somewhere end of 2026. And then once we have the models done, we will start to remap everything. And that's taking the new LiDAR, applying the water surface against the terrain, figuring out if it's above ground or below ground water wise, and then have new maps, delineations, the 100-year, the 500-year, the floodway, the conveyance corridors. And all of that is somewhere middle of 2027. And that's kind of the end of our project, along with a full CIP report and all the normal drainage markups you'll need. And in this process, all 2 or 3 years of this, we do have in our schedule and our budget every year to review the criteria manual as needed through feedback that y'all have gotten. If this becomes just super cumbersome and super headache, we can take a step back, regurgitate it, and get feedback. So anything y'all hear, any rumblings, any heartache, any hurdles that Melinda, your team has, let us know, because we can always take a step back and kind of massage it and make it more palatable for the county, more understandable for the community, and more manageable for the engineers.
Well, my point being, development law in the state of Texas favors developers. We all know that. Okay. And the question being, would this tap the brakes somewhat on developments? Well, it would sure give more scrutiny toward the drainage aspect. We don't want to slow anybody down in building new subdivisions and such. But the other side of it is, would these 5 points of criteria being added today or tomorrow, not today, but consider today and maybe added tomorrow, would that be an overall impact where it would tap the brakes on developments? That's the question I'm going to get from the public. So I'm looking at the easy answer, not the engineering answer, even though the engineering answer is the most correct. Okay.
I don't think so. I think because the 500-year is very, very, very rarely 2 feet above the 100-year, I believe the finished floor elevation will not be a hindrance, but it will allow you to meet the Harris County minimum. The Atlas 14 is already adopted. I'll go 1 to 5. The Atlas 14 flow rate is already adopted. It's already in your criteria before this came out. The hydrograph timing, the not allowing the use of hydrograph timing to minimize detention, it's something that you kind of already do without being documented. When we review things on y'all's behalf, we don't let people do that. And that's just general practices. I mean, any drainage calculation can be massaged and manipulated 100 ways. So that one I don't think is there's no change there. The detention factor at 0.55 minimum, I don't think is going to be a hindrance because I believe the calculations that are in here for tracks under 200 acres, the math associated with that, the engineering calculations, it's already going to be a higher rate than 0.55 acre feet per acre of detention volume. So it's not going to be a hindrance. It'll make their life a little easier because if somebody comes in and says, oh, it's 0.42, well, it's one out of 10 may have that. Well, let's make it 0.55 and it's easy. So that's, I don't think that'll be a hindrance. The compensating cut to the 500 year, I see that potentially being the hurdle. The way the memo from Harris County writes is these are the minimum standards for drainage to Harris County facilities. So if we put that caveat in there and say for areas that drain to Harris County facilities, here's the 500-year compensating or minimum floodplain fill elevation, that could be the one that does add to the potential development of a project. And it's not from a water resource, public works, drainage engineer, that's not a bad thing for managing flood risk.
Yeah.
From a developer, it is a hurdle. It is a cost. It is a impact to their development. But it's not a unsurmountable risk or effort, and it is a big benefit to the risk, a big reduction to the risk of floodplain, of flooding to that development.
Earlier you said that there's something you already allow. You're already not allowing people to do something. What was
Finished floor elevation is the one that you'll already have in there. And that's what it said. So the compensating cut for floodplain fill is a FEMA regulatory thing. And I don't know if there's something already in here, but if it is in here, it's to the 100-year. This Harris County minimum is taking it to the effective 500-year. Now, if we say it's only to the areas that drain to Harris County, the areas that do drain to Harris County, all of those floodplain areas have flood models, which means they have a 500-year elevation in the model. Areas on the other side of the Trinity that are more zone A, they don't have a 500-year, and it would be super cumbersome to try to impose this Harris County minimum to the areas on the other side of the Trinity that doesn't have a 500-year mapped in
does
model.
this do that?
As it currently sits when it came to November, yes, because it said for other than coastal areas, here's what Liberty County is going to require. Compensating cut for fill above the 500, up to the 500 year. I am proposing as of this morning to massage that and say, instead of for coastal areas only, or excluding coastal areas, stipulate for areas that drain to Harris County facilities, here's the floodplain fill. And they already have to do it to the 100-year, but this is taken to the 500-year to meet the Harris County minimums. So it's the Harris County trigger, not necessarily my gut feel.
Well, it makes us a good neighbor in Harris County, which I think in the April flood, we were blamed at not being a very good neighbor.
Yeah.
And I understand that their point there, but they allowed, I say they, there's that word, they allowed development over the last 25, 30 years in the Kingwood, Tontosita area that did take this into consideration.
Yep.
But now they are, and so they're wanting us to take consideration as well. What water we dump on them, we have at least an idea of how much it is and where it's coming from. Is that pretty much in a nutshell?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's pretty dang close.
Yeah. Good.
And my effort over the next 2 years will be to incorporate the new LiDAR, develop new models, and create new maps so that the complete flood risk understanding within the county is there. And then work with y'all to develop the regulations and criteria update that help maintain the status quo, leverage the use of this new data and modeling techniques so that the assumptions that go into it by other engineers and other development communities are consistent with how to manage that data and not wash away some of the benefits that we've got in the proposed projects.
Yeah. Well,
just
the
like Harris
biggest-
County wants.
Yeah, the biggest hurdle is the development upon development that are contiguous and what their overall impact is. I'm enjoying seeing this get done because it's never been done in the history of Liberty County. So maybe if it had been done 25, 30 years ago, we'd be miles ahead at this point. At least we are making headway. So
Yes, sir.
kind of get the idea about the 5-point criteria they're wanting to add and why. It's probably
I'm not sold on it, but
okay.
I understand it a little better.
Well, yeah.
I'd rather you get all these things you're talking about massaging. I'd rather get all that stuff worked out. And before we go jumping in and passing more regulations on people that trying to build there.
And
we got. I don't understand why you can't build a sand pit because the FEMA don't have all their stuff together.
No, it's not the digging of the sand pit. It's the
spoil. Basically,
spoil afterwards.
Okay, they get an engineer to show that there's no rise.
That's impossible in a
not the-
floodway. I mean,
It's not the no rise, it's the flow conveyance. And that is cumbersome to analyze. And that does take detailed engineering with models and maps.
right.
And there may not be maps and models in some of the areas that want to put sand fills in.
Okay, there's not maps and models for that to be done. So why do we got to worry with it?
Because we're all
If they don't have their stuff together, why do we got to mess with it?
a lot of these areas have never been mapped in Liberty County. That's why we were depending so much on this study.
Okay, so why are we trying to make regulations for areas that we don't have any maps or anything?
'Cause I don't ever want to go through a FEMA cab again.
So
I
for
mean,
what?
It's community assessment visit that I'm going through with FEMA. They have nitpicked Liberty County.
So we got to shut down everything we do
I'm not
until
shutting everything down. I'm just asking.
we're
for a
practically
new
shut
plan.
down.
remember the meeting we had this past summer with FEMA? Where they came in and said, y'all are not in compliance.
Yeah.
That's what this is about. That we're trying to get in compliance.
Yes,
And so far,
desperately.
we're getting there. But at the same token, yeah, there are
So there's no variance for commercial mining.
Well, my guess, are these in zone A areas?
No.
They're fully mapped?
They're
Okay,
floodways.
with floodways.
Because I've even seen in other areas where mining, the owners were
Well, a lot of
made
sand.
to put their spoilage back into.
Yeah,
a
because
hole.
see, some places that have the sand pits, we don't even have permits on them. We didn't even know they were there till I drive by and see the piles of sand. So we don't even know they're available.
The
They don't
areas that
even
they're
get
doing this mining doesn't affect the flow of anything unless the river goes out of banks, and then they're going to.
If they're digging the sand or gravel or anything out of the pit, that's one thing. But if they leave it sitting on that property, which is already in a floodway, which if it's 2 foot, 6 foot, 8 foot, once we have an event and the water comes in, it's going to go around that and flood areas that don't normally flood. That's basically, I mean, what I'm trying to get across. Yeah. I understand the frustration, believe me. I don't like answering the phone anymore because everybody gets so mad at me, but I'm just doing what I was told to do and bring it up in compliance.
I don't think these sand pits cause any area to flood that don't flood already.
Well, and so I don't disagree with that. And I don't know the nuances and details. The criteria manual update that was presented only changes minor verbiage within the sections that address these 5 topics. We do have plans to go through a whole lot more evaluation of things like you're referring to, the floodway development, the floodway, floodplain fill. And a lot of that technical stuff will be done post modeling because once
can a professional engineer come in, do the study and say that, it's going to
Yeah.
cause this, that?
every analysis that happens, every development that happens in a floodplain that has to go to FEMA has to be signed and sealed by a PE.
Yeah.
Professional
Okay.
engineer. So if a sand pit operator wants to do a development and wants to start cutting and casting their sand off to the side, stockpiling it, the plan of where that dirt's going to go has to be documented, has to be analyzed within the model. Like you physically go into the cross section and we will draw the excavation and draw the fill and run the flow through there. And it will show you there is a change in water surface and a change in floodplain extents.
Okay, that's all I did. That's all I wanted. If somebody sat down and tell them what they got to do.
That's on them to hire and them to figure it out. It's not something for the county to do or us to do. That's the issue. That's a private.
No, I mean, but
Okay.
you know, tell them we did an engineering study to show this.
That
It's in the regulations.
that's in the
Huh?
That's in our
regulations.
regulations already.
And this isn't changing it, but yeah, those were already documented
Okay.
regulations and necessities. And any engineer that does drainage work knows those things. So.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I will. So at this point, I will make the 3 or 4 changes that we've talked about and resubmit a package over to Dee Dee and Melinda and let y'all take a look and figure out how to best to incorporate it. Because these are changes to the subdivision development regulations as well as the flood prevention ordinance. The changes are in 2 places. And Melinda, do you want the short markups that I have, or do you want the full document fully marked up? Because I don't have the Word doc of the originals.
No.
Wonder why?
Okay. So just the changes that I've sent you already?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
I wonder why Montgomery County didn't have that.
I've got a new version this morning.
Except this.
Of course. you do.
Yeah.
All right, so I'll need that. Yes.
Okay.
But ask.
Why haven't the other counties adopted this?
Waller and Fort Bend have adopted it. Liberty, Galveston, Montgomery, and who was the other? Give me a sec.
Waller?
Waller adopted
They
it.
did? Okay.
Brazoria. I believe Montgomery is pushing back. I believe Montgomery is not going to adopt it, from what I've heard.
And the reason would be?
I have no idea. They've got some of their own conflicts up in that Kingwood area and some other things that I definitely can't speculate on, but there's been some conversations up there. I don't know about Brazoria and Galveston. It could be that they just haven't had the chance, haven't had the time, or don't have the desire. I don't know. But I have heard that Montgomery is not planning to. And I do know that Waller and Fort Bend did formally adopt the amendments. And Fort Bend even had a secondary conversation with Harris County to get the Brazos River incorporated or adopted as a regional flood source that is not triggered by local rain, meaning you can use Brazos River as a free outfall, like Galveston Bay. If we were to outfall to Galveston Bay, there's no reason for detention if you can get your water straight into Galveston Bay, because that increased flow from development is not going to raise the Galveston Bay's elevation. It's not going to flood anybody. Brazos River, same type thing. The flows that come from Fort Bend into the Brazos aren't going to change the Brazos River elevation. It's the flows from College Station, Waco, and everything up that finally come down. Trinity, I think, is in the same kind of boat. It's managed by the releases from Livingston and the flows from Dallas and everything in between. I don't think the flow from City of Liberty is causing the Trinity River to rise. So,
yeah.
But Harris County has not had to adopt or accept that, acknowledge that. But it is something that we've talked to them and they said, yeah, we're willing to take that to Commissioner's Court, Harris County Commissioner's Court. But it wasn't something we felt was worth doing now, because the time and effort to get this adopted so that y'all are available to have partnership projects with them. And it's something that we will argue with them in the future or request that they adopt Trinity as a regional flood source, not a local flood source.
How is Jefferson and Chambers County?
Well, Jefferson, I don't think is contiguous, right, to Harris?
No.
And Chambers, they don't have
Yeah,
Chambers in
this
here.
plan.
Yeah, they don't have Chambers in here. Yeah. I'm guessing because Chambers does go through Cedar, and Cedar is Harris County.
Mhm.
Cedar Bayou. Yeah, they don't have Chambers listed as an adjacent community. Interesting. Maybe Chambers already had it. Maybe that'd be the case. Maybe Chambers already had these criteria adopted and they didn't have to change their stuff.
Okay.
That's a good question.
Somebody and see if I can find a copy.
Yeah.
Maybe you can get Bobby Hall call down there and ask him.
Bobby Hall.
Bobby Hall, their PE.
I did drainage reviews for them for about 4 years.
Did you? Good guy.
This survey number is 3 numbers.
So the question on the cut and creating spoil bags for a sand pit, basically you get an engineer to check those numbers first.
Yes, they would.
Sign off on that.
Yeah, as part of their submittal to FEMA for the Lomer, they would do the modeling and mapping associated with what they propose to do to the land and show that there's no impact, both for floodplain storage and floodplain conveyance. If it's in the floodway, that is a definite mandatory thing. And a lot of dirt work tends to be believed that if the dirt stays within a mile of itself, it's no impact, but the fill does cause a conveyance issue. So yeah, a study of some sort that gets submitted to FEMA. Now the question is, does the person doing the dirt work know they have to do that? The engineer does, but do they have an engineer and do they know what they're doing? So there's a lot of, and that goes back to the education, the awareness, the understanding, and the regulations.
Well, I'd like for us to be a leader, not a follower. Realistically. Yeah.
I'm good.
You good? Okay. Yeah, that might be a good idea to check in with Montgomery County and see how they handle that particular question. I'd like to know, since they are a neighbor. Okay. What else you got, William?
That was it for me. I will get the revised updated criteria that we kind of talked about today with adopting the higher than the 100 or the 500 and get those back over to Melinda and Dee Dee for them to put into the right process and format for y'all to review and potentially consider.
Okay.
But we will be back every August, if not earlier, to have similar type conversations of things that y'all are having heartache on, things that they're having heartache on, things that FEMA has questions on, things that the development community is struggling with, and we can work on making this a living document that gets throughout the course of this project. We have the funds to make this a living document.
Let's do it biannually.
Okay.
That way
I will set it
it
up.
never gets totally stagnant, at least in the minds of the guys that are sitting here.
That makes sense.
Does the public have anything? Any questions y'all might ask? I see a lot of new faces here that might be in the development business. Yes, sir. Come on up, please.
Hi, my name is John Hardy. I'm the engineer for Colony Ridge. I'm the director of engineering. And we've done a lot of flood modeling out there and a lot of analysis, because that's one of the things that bothers me is flooding and traffic. First thing we looked at. So we've done quite a bit of work. I'd like to work with y'all. I don't like the minimum detention. That does not always work. Need to look at that closely, because we have.
The 0.55 acres.
Yes.
With Atlas 1400 year rainfall.
Yes, yes, sir. So anyway, it'd be nice to work with y'all on it. Okay. We've done a lot of work on, I've got probably 40 plus years of detention and storm calculations behind me. So we want to do what's best. Flooding is, we have to protect the general public, regardless of what these regulations say. So we have to do it regardless.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So sounds like a plan. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Who was that?
Engineer for Colony Ridge. Anybody else? All righty, then we'll bump it on down to the next number. Okay. Y'all take a short break. Anybody stretch your legs, whatever you need to. We can do that. This workshop part 2 And this is where we discuss proposed new Liberty County Jail. This is going to take a while. Maybe not today, but overall, the planning aspect of this, the first step is what I would call architectural programming. And that's where we're at right now. If I'm not mistaken, Mr. Burns, is the programming part, planning and programming, as they call it. And this is where we get all the ideas together. So you have a conceptual design, and then also based upon some of the projections from the Commission on Jail Standards and what they anticipate our jail population could be between 2020, 2030, 2040. Those projections, we have to look at that and take that into consideration. And then what can we realistically afford is going to be probably the biggest determining factor. So this location is going to be out by the new existing sheriff's office and existing annex. It'll be to the rear of that property. There's some future expansion building sites, for county facilities for the future. Also, that were included in the property. It's all consideration, but the main meat and taters of this is going to be the new jail itself, and really where we need to be looking at as far as population affordability and practicality. I guess it's going to be and since we are pretty Spartan when it gets down to the practicality aspect, that's what we're going to be looking at. So I guess lead us away.
Okay. Thank you, James.
I just pick it up and hold it.
Here. Yeah, put this one over here.
I just let it sit there.
I need to talk about it.
Yeah, that was
How's that?
Yeah,
Okay,
can
and I
share
know-
this one.
I know the drawings aren't the easiest to see when you're not standing right over them because the scale is very small. This is actually a pretty big site now. I don't remember how many acres we have. But for those that aren't real familiar with it, in the lower right-hand corner, going on a diagonal, that's 146. So the highway's right there. Where you see a whole lot of lines, can't really make it out. That's where the annex is and the sheriff's office sitting there. So what you're seeing to the far left, that is where we propose that the new jail should go. We took into account the jail commission's facility needs analysis, like the judge said, and what they told you that they believe you need over a certain period of time. But we also wanted to look way beyond that to, so far down the road that you don't get boxed in. And if this jail is maintained well, the way we've got it laid out, it can be expanded 50, 60 years from now and still operate. Many jails are not designed and planned like that. It's just the way we do it. And so the example of that is your current jail, where it wasn't planned and it just can't take any more expansions.
This is a little over 70 acres is what it is.
70, okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I knew the new piece was like 35 or so something like that. So you see what looks like a big circle in the middle? That is the radius around the big radio tower that's out there. We've tried to make sure that all the buildings stayed out of that 400-foot radius, just in case. The gray that you can see, those are the extensions of the roads or new roads, as on the top side of the drawing where the new road could be. The top part as well, right above the sheriff's office. I know you can't read that, but that says something like future building sites or something like that. Other county buildings could be built out there. We pushed the jail all the way to the back. And what we're going to do, unless somebody's got some questions about sites, I will show you the building plans that we've come up with. And they're color coded, so they're a little easier to see. You can't see all the details of the walls and things unless you zoom in on it. But The color-coded drawings will show us how the initial 816 bed information from the jail commission can be built and how it can be stepped back down to something that is maybe more logical, more affordable right now. So if we could go to that other drawing. There you can see it. It is, I've got it, Jed, I'm gonna come take that one sheet off your desk. Yeah. And I have the sheet. There you go. And I can look right here. So the part you see in orange, yeah. That's what I'm used to doing, standing up in front of everybody and talking. So, like I said, we planned this at the 816 bed mark, the jail commission told us. But I knew we had to plan it so it could be phased. You got to start somewhere. So what we want to do is we want to build all of the support functions of a jail one time. And that's the kitchen, the laundry, the sally port, the visitation, the administration area, intake, the booking area, the medical area, all that stuff. Build it one time. Don't ever have to add on to it. That's where jails get very cumbersome in the future when you add on to that stuff. So you build a kitchen, for example, that's big enough for 1,000 beds. The space is there, but we just don't buy all the kitchen equipment until you need it. So buy another kettle and buy another cooktop. Everything's in there. Same with the laundry. It's built big enough. You just buy new washers and dryers as your demand grows. So what you see in orange is what I'm saying is our basic plan that I think you need to start with. It's 408 beds. And of course, with the jail, you know, you got the jails, you've got all kinds of requirements from the jail commission on how many beds you need for different types of cells. This is an indirect supervision jail. We talked about that. A lot of questions, a lot of things been asked to come up with this for the sizing of it. We've split it into male and female parts so that it makes a lot of sense. And so if we see in the basic orange, if you look to the left side over here, this is the female side. You're looking at the left of there. The rest of it really becomes the male housing, which is the bulk of the jail. Right in the middle here is the mental and medical areas, because we have a lot of needs for the mentally ill now in jail. So it's very specialized. So again, the orange shows you everything you need to start, and it could carry you for quite a few years before you need to expand. The next logical expansion we see is the pink area. That would add 192 beds. That would take you up to a 600 bed capacity. If you add the blue, that takes you up to the 816. Okay. So by doing that, we can phase it and basically fit the need for beds with the cost and what we do. That's the way I spoke to you all about that on the phone, you and Commissioner Kowalski explaining what I was doing. So now you see it in action here. It's a big building. The orange area is 183,000 square feet. If you add the pink area in, that adds another 27,000 square feet. You add the blue area in, that adds another nearly 35,000 square feet. So you can see, you put all that together, you're going to be bumping 200,000 square feet or so. But go back and think about what I showed you on the site plan. The drawing that I showed you on the site plan is this building. But then I showed you there's enough room by positioning the building correctly that we could add another 500 to 700 beds well into the future. This jail, you know, again, if it's maintained, could last 80 years, 100 years, because of the way it's designed. It's easy to expand. That's way we like to do it. All you would be doing is adding housing. You don't need to add any kitchen, you don't add any laundry, nothing else. Just add more housing as you can. And I designed them in modules. You know, if I can, I'll pick on the pink area, for example, because it's easy. The pink area is 192 beds. There's 4 pods, and those can be built in groups of 2. So 96 beds, 96 beds. So a lot of flexibility. We don't have to add all 4 pink at one time. You would add 2 because of the way it would be designed to be built. The rest of it, the orange is designed the same way, the blue is the same way. And it's all about how do, you know, we think about how do you build it in the future? How does it operate? Because of smoke systems and things that have to go into it. Here, we don't want anything on your roof, just like we do at the sheriff's office. Nothing on the roof except there's kitchen fans that have to go on the roof. Everything else is underneath the roof. And so we design it so there's a clear story, so all the smoke exhaust can go through a vertical wall at the center of the roof. Instead of being a ridge, it's a clear story. There's a gap about 5 or 6 feet vertically that lets us put louvers in and exhaust the smoke. That's the way we always want to do it when we're approaching a roof. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. I can answer specific questions for you. It does have a truck dock, so all the deliveries are coming in through a truck dock, which if you look at the drawing up there is on the right over here. As a warehouse where everything comes in. All the services, the food, the laundry, and everything is down on the right end.
Where is the generator?
It will sit out here near this big electrical. All the gear will go in here. Then the opposite end of the building. So if you're looking at the plan up there on the left, that's the Sally Port. So everybody that's being arrested is brought through the Sally Port and enters the jail on the left end. It comes into the booking area. So you can see the separation. Left end, inmates come in, right end, services come in, and right smack in the middle, down on the bottom, is where the visitors come in and to go to visitation, or they can go see administration. Administration is to the right of center. Everything else above that is jail.
Do you have a rough estimate on price?
I can tell you that we've been, you know, running. We haven't budgeted yet because we wanted y'all to see and give me direction. But my thinking right now is that we're probably run some numbers down. Probably somewhere around $263,000 to $272,000 a bed. So in the jail world, you price everything on a square foot basis or per bed for rough estimating. So at $263,000 for the orange area, that's your starter kit. Let's call it that. It's $107 million.
107.
107. If we go to the higher number, it's almost 111 million. So that's why I think, you know, that gets you started.
So you just take $26,300 times 192.
Yes.
Come up with
You'll come up with another number and you can add it. So it's so just I did run the numbers on that on the 272,000 of that. If you did the 600, which would include the pink, so that's going to push you up to 163 million. So now that may be starting to get a little too pricey for right now.
I like one thing. You guys are apparently planning in order to build the jail. We've already took steps. We've already bought the land. I would probably recommend that y'all, in January, I will be held. When I come back, maybe get bigger staff. We used to have David Mendoza. I know he's retired. He was on maybe start talking to them. More importantly, talk to U.S. capital investors. Start talking to them, get them on board, and they can start running the amortization schedule. I mean, this paperwork I gave y'all was a straight amortization schedule.
Yeah.
I'm not a fun guy. Maybe start talking to them, get the picture of debt structure that y'all want to plan and budget with. I think that would be the logical next step. You got the price of how much it costs, and then you can now we start looking at slicing out the payments.
Do we want to set, or at least try to give an idea to keep this at, say, 120 million maximum for whatever we're going to do?
Well, see, I did a straight amortization. Now they can adjust those payments. I know
Yeah.
the sheriff's department.
Yeah.
They can give you guys a better idea. But I think something, I mean, this is what y'all got to work with. I mean, Liberty County, all the revenue Liberty County gets a year that's available to y'all's sole discretionary spending is roughly around $78 million. This year, it usually goes up about $6-7 million a year, y'all's projected revenue. But for that projected revenue, you know, you can't put it all in the paying of the debt.
Mhm.
You know, you've got to fix the variable costs that y'all have to budget for. So I'm saying,
Yep.
that would give with these guys, and I think that $100 million, $110 million, that's something I think that y'all can work in the budget. Still do things that y'all have to do. Budget. You know, turn house broke.
Yep.
Buy a house you can't afford this. You start getting $200 million. You know. You got the house and you can't afford to pay. Nobody go in it.
Well, and right now, you know, you don't want to overbuild and have more beds than you can put people in or hire people to run it. So that's why I think the 408 makes sense to start with.
Right now, I think we probably need 408.
Yeah, you do.
There's a big push right now. I don't know. I'm not privy to any what it's up. There's a push right now. You get another district judge in the county. And that's just going to flatten out our population, in my opinion. And then Sheriff Ray was talking about it pre-COVID. Our jail population was running at the max 220.
Yep.
Well, after COVID, they stopped processing these inmates, and you got this background. Judges are processing the same amount. The two district judges are processing the same amount of inmates, but you still got that backlog that would have to do twice as much to get rid of that backlog. Okay. That's another thing I'll be.
Well,
Also, we got to look at the increase in population throughout the next 10
Pardon me
years.
now?
The increase in population. In
Yeah, it's
general,
going to increase, but yeah.
it's-
But when I go to this, that's y'all's decision. I'm
Yeah.
not.
Well, and see, Bruce, this is why I laid it out like I did. I think you start with the orange. Again, you don't have to add like the whole pink area. You add this piece. And you go back and add this piece.
Yeah.
What you don't want to do is try to piecemeal these two.
Yeah.
That doesn't work as well with design.
Yeah, that's another
Half,
5 million,
half.
49 right
Yep.
there.
So, you know, it's one of those things you can look at when it come back with the numbers and you may say, well, let's go ahead and do 96 or half of it. One of the things too, well, a couple of things I want to tell you. Now, remember, when I'm telling you these numbers, that's just what we think the building costs to build. You got to remember to always assume about 10% more to cover the soft costs. And I know from working with Wayne in the past, I don't know if you're going to want to put it in with the long-term debt. You may not have any choice because you're talking about another 10 or 12 million maybe to pay for all the design and, you know, engineering, architecture, all the way through the project, which is going to be about 3 years worth of work, plus buying some furniture and stuff. That's all the soft costs. But so, you know, you could be looking at around 10%, but you got to factor in. So on top of this,
10%. Yeah. 120 million.
that is. That's why I'm pointing that out, because most counties don't go, oh, well, I'll just pay that out of pocket. You're going to have to probably roll that into the debt.
well,
And that's when we put the whole budget together, we'll see that. But the other thing is we have to decide how we're going to build this. And I think y'all liked it. We like the construction manager at risk method. And if we're going to do that, my recommendation would be that we do not do what we've done on the other jobs where we waited and waited and waited. We need to pull the trigger on that as soon as we can. It's not going to cost you any money initially. So let's go through the process as quickly as possible, get them lined up, because then they can help us scrutinize that budget and maybe see that, based on real contractor that's going to build it, so if those numbers can come down while you're working with the financial people. So it all kind of comes together.
If y'all want to do this, in my opinion, I think it would be in the best interest to get this project good. Before we start the budget.
Yep.
Tax application.
Okay, so after the first of the year, let's sit down with Jim Gilly and Company. Okay,
Start getting some ballpark.
okay. And then see if we can hit on a number that's palatable between everybody, that what our anticipation is for the first go round.
Then we have, when we bought the land, they put a clock on it.
Yeah.
So we did a reimbursement from the debt. They put a tire on it. Then we have to start.
The question's going to be, we do this bond or CO, and we said it say 120 million. That's just a number. It's arbitrary, But anyway, at what point do you start paying that back?
We borrowed the money next year, the first payment would be due. I mean, we do it this current fiscal year, the first payment would be next budget year. It's like the sheriff's department, as soon as we have next year. And of course, first while you're still doing it, it's got interest on the payments, so it takes off. But yeah, you got to start making payments.
So you're looking at like a 40-year amortization. 30.
Yeah, 30 years.
Well, you
Six.
match the financing to the life of the building.
I don't think really going to only pay that much. You got so much compound interest in it.
Okay.
One of the other things to take into account on your timing, it's what we do when these numbers I'm throwing out to you. That's what we're thinking the number will be when the bids come in a year. But we can't tell you what we think it is today, because that means nothing. We need to know what is it tomorrow.
Well, we got to do the bids.
Well, that's where I'm going with
We
this,
get
'cause
ahead of ourselves.
it'll take us a year, weeks, maybe 14 months to bid it. Take the contractor a couple of months to get the price of it and get it to where you can bring it to.
So we just slow down.
Well, no, if y'all if y'all slow down, it's pushing that our estimated time, if you will, out. We're thinking based on the numbers I just ran through, those numbers be good about the end of next year.
Yeah.
Well, but to hit those targets, we have to get started very quick, because it'll take every bit of 12 to 14 months before we can let the contractor have the bid. So that's, as we do all these other things, if we take 3 or 4 months to do all this other stuff, you're going to push out a few months. And every day could be more dollars is the only thing you got to think about.
This is 108, and we consider a 15%, 15% over that.
Run your cost up.
Yeah.
So the sooner that we could get started, the more you mitigate that problem on the tail end. It's like that on any project we do. I mean, you look back at everything we've done for you. It's the same problem we have with it. It's a big job, a little annex. Timing just has the potential for cost to keep creeping.
And material cost as well. Yeah. I like the layout. It's everything that we consider. Billy, have you looked at it pretty good?
Yes.
Sheriff,
And
you
there-
had a chance to do that.
There's some things that once y'all say go, to the real design, we will have more meetings and we will tweak the design. This is just concept. And so based on this, just so you know where we're at right now, we have engaged the entire design team because the way we work is fixed fees. So we met with all our design team last week. I told them that by Christmas, they had to have their fees presented to me so I could start putting it into the budget. Okay. There's a lot of engineering, a lot of different firms involved, so that we can see where we're at on that. I have a gut feel of where it's going to be, and got to make that target. But then we got to start putting the construction budget together and look for any other soft costs and things that we're not thinking about right now.
On this 408 beds, do you know the estimate on manpower it would take to run a complex like this?
I can roughly tell you. So for every pod, think one officer. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. These are very specialized. 8, 9, 10, 11. That's kind of bare minimum. You got to have somebody in the control room. That's 12. You got somebody probably in booking. 13. I mean, it's just on a normal shift.
Mm-hmm.
You could easily have 15 people on staff. And
so
so
this is
during
what
busy
you're-
times, maybe.
So this is what you're calling indirect.
This is indirect.
So
So what indirect means, for those that you don't know, is the officer is outside of the cell, indirectly supervising. If we were direct supervision, the officer would be inside the cell with the inmates. We talked about this some time ago early on and said we did not want direct supervision. So this is an indirect supervision
it
jail.
sounds like this would be easier to maintain and run than what Orville Jail is now.
Absolutely. And again, so Bruce, you can see what I'm talking about, how we have a main corridor. It's the way I like to do it. Then we have these other corridors that come off of it, which is what allows you to plug components in and add on to it. Most jails weren't built that way. They just added when they needed to add.
Yep.
And it just gets to be so convoluted it doesn't flow well.
Like the laundry room, I mean, you would go in there and just put X amount of washer and dryers to accommodate this, and you would just add on because you already have the room.
That's what we've got here. You can see dryers are on the outside wall, washers here. So to start with at 400 beds, we might have 4 washers, 4 dryers. But there's a room to add up to, I think the total in here is maybe 8 or 10 each. And we're talking big commercial laundry. And all you got to do is go buy another one and plug it in.
Mm-hmm.
You want to build the infrastructure now. It's not going to get any cheaper. You don't want to add on to the building. You want to get it done. All you want to do in the future is when you have a need to add a pod. I mean, in my case, I want you to add 2 pods because of the way it makes sense to build.
Yeah.
And it's easy to do. And it doesn't encumber our operation. That's a lot of the problems you have with those buildings is how do you live in there and occupy and work in there when you're trying to add on to something? It's hard to do, except we've planned it so you can do that with ease. We do, some other details in here, like over here, there's a special transportation area. So the inmates that are going to the courthouse, we don't want anybody going back through booking. Booking's one way inside. Transportation is how they're going out and they're coming back in through transportation. That way we don't have mix-ups in the booking area. Most jails, everybody goes in and out of the booking. It can get confusing. A lot of times that's how you have escapes if somebody walked out of there because they weren't clear on who was.
Thank you, Dwayne.
Thank you, Dwayne.
The ladies are having a Christmas party at the office.
Okay.
Better get over it.
So
there you go.
A&E costs to be considered to be pretty close after the first of the year.
Yeah, as soon as y'all are ready to go, again, the best thing we could do is, number one, go through the process to get the construction manager on board.
Yep.
To start advising us on constructability. We've had some of these discussions with the contractor, your sheriff's office. Again, there's no guarantee they will be selected. but we've talked about a lot of things that they see based on the site out here, what we ought to do.
Well, they're familiar with the site.
Right.
That's-
Because I had discussions with my engineers, my structural engineer, we had talked about using concrete planks for the slab, the foundation, because of bad soil. But he came back and said, let's do double T's.
Okay.
And because they can hold up more load. So we're looking at that aspect. We're not even designing yet, but everybody's thinking how they're going to do it. So if we could go through the process as soon as we can to get a construction manager in, even if you told us to go, say mid-January to get started, which we'd love to do, it'd still probably be mid-February, maybe before we could have finished the process and y'all have selected a construction manager. But that's good because they would be on board as we're beginning the schematic design. And remember, it takes 3 trips to the jail commission to get approval to build this schematic design, which we've already been studying all this. We need 3 months to do that. It's a big effort on this. Then we'll get jail commission approval. Then we'll go to design development. I think we've figured about 5 or 6 months for that. We've kind of changed the way we do things, Judge. That we used to put all the big effort in construction documents, but we found out in jails the big push needs to be in design development to get everybody squared away, and then that makes the last 4 or 5 months of construction documents, the coordination a lot better because you're not doing it all at the tail end. It's been done in the middle of the job. So again, at least 12 months, maybe 14 months once we finish penciling out the schedule. So sooner we get started, the better, because we know that it just means costs go up if we delay. Yeah. But we could start before y'all have all the other ducks in a row. That's y'all's call. How
Because we can go out and work for staff, get the CO, everything lined up, and I still think we're going to need that figure right there.
Yeah. And see, again, I see what you're doing there. If we had the construction manager on board with us as we're starting the schematic design and they're budgeting, that could tell us, could we afford to go ahead and add these two? Could we afford to add those? I don't know that we can.
Well, this $5 million for this 192 beds right now, 5 years down the road is probably going to be 150 beds.
That's the problem. And I know it sounds crazy, but go back. I designed the Hood County Jail in 1993. I know that's a few years ago. But that jail, 192 bed jail, cost $6.7 million. But you know what it would cost today? It'd be $70 million. So and so we know it's going to happen. The costs are going to go up. It's never going to get any cheaper than doing it today. So
you designed also the Midland County Jail.
Midland County right now too, and some of these features are from Midland County because we showed that to you. This is not Midland's plan. This is specifically designed for y'all. Midland County is under construction right now. 776 beds. It's $175 million. We couldn't do that again today, but that's because we opened bids a year ago. See what I'm saying? So, but we can look at their numbers and project forward, which is what we're doing, saying, I think this is what it would cost.
Well, building materials go up about 1.5% per month, roughly.
We're figuring 10% a year is what our escalation is going to be for every year that we delay.
Sheriff, Chief, do y'all have any?
I was just going to say this. We have right now today our count's 318. We're not even enforcing. I'm not taking every warrant that we have. We've got 64, I believe, out of county. If you're averaging $100 a day, we're paying a little over $2 million a year to house them somewhere else. So that would be kind of an offset. I mean, you'd be saving $2 million a year, but if you do that, I would imagine in a year or 2 years, whenever this facility's built, it's going to be 400 beds. It's going to be full whenever they get.
That's something you have to think about. It's the balance we're trying to find, because you are correct. It'll take us a year to 14 months to design. Take the contractor a couple of months to get pricing. And so I'm just going to pick on January 1st. If y'all said go January 1st, 2025, we would be looking at early summer, probably 2026 before they could start construction.
Yeah.
And it would take probably 30 months to build.
So on the 408 beds at 107 million, that's not including the furniture and fixtures.
And soft costs. Now, let me clear that up too. It counts all the jail furniture. So bunks that are bolted to the floor, anything that has to be built in to operate, tables, bunks, that's figured in. What that doesn't figure in is office furniture for the administrative area.
So what would we just on the 408 beds? What do I need to add to this $107 million?
I say you always add another 10%, because the 10% has to pay the architecture and engineering fees on these things are big. Yeah. So but at 10%, you just say you're going to add another, 10, $11 million. And that's just for budgeting. I think we'll come in under that, but I don't want to tell you that until I get all the numbers.
Hope you do.
We'll have real numbers in the budget.
The builder land, we've already spent $700,000 on land that's coming out of this fund. Plus, we're going to build the other annexes. That's money, so I want to make sure we have enough money to.
15 million. How old is that new, the old jail? Not the old jail, but the old jail.
So
30 years?
It's probably about 95.
that's somewhere.
It's in 30 years, okay. And
You say, what's the life expectancy of this jail?
I believe that if you maintain it, it's 70 plus years.
Yeah.
We've gone and replaced a lot of jails that are 60 years old,
Mhm.
and they weren't planned for expansion and technology wasn't there.
Yeah.
But everything we're doing today ought to last really long, because again, the way we're planning it, we're not getting in our own way.
Yeah.
We've planned for a logical expansion, and the way we'll do this, just so you know, you'll like this, I think. We're basically going to build a concrete box. We're going to do that with CMU wall, where we're talking about using precast, tilt gas here. And then we take precast concrete planks and put them in as a ceiling. That creates a box. But then we have mechanical space above that, so we can walk on top of the planks. All the mechanical systems, the piping, the conduit, everything's under the roof.
Yeah.
We have steel roof on
Not
top.
like they did in Polk County.
Probably.
okay, Walker
Did
County.
you go to Walker County with us?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the same way. So that's what makes it last long. We don't have stuff on the roof.
Yeah.
That's being affected by the weather. And so, again, if it can be maintained, I've seen a lot of counties that have 50-year-old jails and the floor's so clean you could eat off of them.
Mhm.
I've also seen 5-year-old jails that look like they need to be torn down and rebuilt. It's all about how it's maintained.
Well, especially in the main side of it, you're in a controlled environment, and that gap between the ceiling of the jail itself and the ceiling.
Yeah, it's got tempered air.
So your guys are not working out in the hot sun; they're in an air-conditioned environment or HVAC environment. Anyway.
And it'll be designed and built such that if one inmate floods his cell, we can shut everything down immediately, identify the problem, go cut it off, turn everything back up
Right.
and on. So now instead of having a whole pod shut down, we have one cell because of some trouble.
TDCJ was designed as direct supervision, and some of those old units are, the walls is over 100 years old, 125 years old probably. But you get out to those old System 1 units like Ellis, Eastham, that were built in the 50s and early 60s, and they're aged, but they're holding well because they're maintained well.
There are stairs. That's how you get up into the mechanical level. use cable trays, lots of cable trays to run stuff. We got stuff everywhere,
Okay.
piping.
All right. Well, we got our work lined out.
You do.
We have a,
Would you like to keep these drawings?
can we? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll
If we
leave
keep
that
these
so
sheets.
y'all could have these. I'm
You
not
got-
gonna leave you that one. That's actually Midland County, but we had it because we were showing engineers that, here's the concept.
Mhm.
Because we have a different engineer that's working with us on yours. And so, I'll show it to you, but there's no reason for us to have this. These are building sections in Midland County. This gives you an idea of the vastness.
Oh, yeah.
See, Bruce, there's the concrete plank. See what right here? And a roof sway up here. So it looks, I had one judge a long time ago at DeWitt County. He goes, I don't understand why you're building that so tall. Nothing going to go up there. And then when he saw it with everything in there, it's like, wow,
There it is.
there's conduit and there's equipment everywhere. And you walk around and service it.
Most buildings, if you look on top of the roof, you have all your AC, ducting and everything else.
It's just not going to wear well. We're not.
Keeps protected.
So, we can, there's a lot of ways you can do the cheaper you build it, but you pay for it.
Yeah.
We don't want to do that to you. So it's going to cost what it costs because of
All right.
the nature of it.
Sheriff, Chief, got anything else you want to add to it? Nothing else?
Like to address our admin building. How we standing on it? Moving everybody over to the old sheriff's department.
We're working on it. I know they're painting some floors, but yeah, we're doing the best we can. I mean, right now, our priority is getting back in shape with jail position.
Correct.
So we're doing the best that we can to move forward what we have. I know that there's the back offices, I believe. I think we're getting some quotes for the front offices for the carpet.
Yeah, it needs to be all painted before we put carpet stuff in there anyway. So I'm just trying to look at a timeline when the admin building that y'all using now, I can start my work. So I mean, I'm just trying to get a time. I'm not trying to push y'all. I'm not trying to shove you. I'm just, I am.
Yeah, you are.
When this is over,
Okay.
The gate welding and stuff, but we're working on it. We're just, it's not moving as fast as everybody would like.
Okay.
We're doing the best we can.
All right. Anything else? All right. Well, Mr. Burns, thank you. Appreciate you. And we will stand adjourned.